Before I say anything else or we get any further into the video, I want to make one thing crystal clear, as I think some may end up misinterpreting this video's title. I am not leaving nor quitting The Division 2, or do I plan to stop making videos on it. I adore this game and franchise. It is the cornerstone of my existence here on YouTube. I'm here till the lights go off whether you like it or not. But the title is not clickbait either. Today I wanted to have an honest and open discussion about the reasons why I have been playing the game less than any time in recent memory, if ever. And so this is going to serve as like half game commentary, right? I want to talk about why I think a lot of players in a similar demographic to me have been reducing their playtime as of late, but then also I want to give just a small channel update to talk about what I'm doing, what my plan is moving forward, and by the end of it all, I would love to hear your thoughts on how you think the game is doing right now. So, as we jump in, major shout out and thank you to our channel members. Your support gives me an incredible amount of stability here on this channel, which I'm immensely appreciative for, so thank you so much. But let's get into this, shall we? And what I wanted to first start with was just highlighting some of the irony in the timing of this video, because despite my personal playtime being reduced as of late, The Division 2 is, at least from like a high level objective standpoint, doing the best that it's been doing since 2020. For one, we're getting the most amount of new content that we've had in years, right? We had a new DLC launched back in May. We finally returned to doing 3-month seasons. Those seasons are now more content and feature rich than we were accustomed to. We got the Retaliations mode this season. We're getting NPC companions next season. They're doing more events than ever, including some bigger ones than we've ever seen before. The Halloween event coming this month is going to be huge. And that content has brought in the most amount of players that we've seen for The Division 2, again, since 2020. Now that amount has subsided absolutely at this point due to the DLC newness now wearing off. But as I said, we saw bigger peaks in the player base than we have in years, so interest in The Division 2 is not in question, right? It is still here, people are still interested in it. The franchise at large also has a brighter and more exciting future and roadmap than I think we've seen in years. After pushing a decade of requests, we finally have a successor to The Division 1's survival mode on the way, with Survivors next year. They're working on The Division 3 in the background, which, given the context of the gaming industry at large, it's pretty wild that we're getting a third game. But I say this all to point out that just because the game at large is seeing relatively good success, that does not mean that every corner of the game is then getting equal treatment or seeing similar success. And I think what's happened recently is that the main hooks that have always kept me engaged as a player, and in many ways, similar players in my demographic, have really gone underdeveloped or untouched entirely, and so naturally, that's going to lead to me playing the game less. The good news is, the devs have already publicly committed to fixing or improving some of what we're going to discuss here, and so that's why I think it's important to clarify this is not intended to be a doom and gloom, game is terrible video. It's an honest discussion about my habits as a player and how I hope to see things develop from here on out. So there are really two main points that I want to touch on here. The first one being PvP. Now, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you're probably tired of hearing me say it, but PvP is my favorite content within The Division. It and the Dark Zone was the reason I got hooked on the first game back in 2016. It has just always offered me more variety, more challenge, and more fun compared to anything else in the game. But today, PvP is in a rough spot. I would argue that it is in one of the worst states, if not the worst state in the franchise's history. Now, I've already gone and made an entire video discussing that and some of the details behind it. I'll link that in the description if you're curious. And believe me when I say that I've made mine and the PvP community's thoughts on this topic very clear to the devs in the channels that I have available to me. They're aware that people are unhappy with the state of PvP, and while I do continue to play it, it's really felt like in recent times, specifically this year, that with each passing month it becomes harder and harder to find a DZ server or a conflict match that is genuinely enjoyable or fun, beyond having to dodge an increasing number of cheaters and lag switchers and Cronus users, then trying to find anybody not using the same 5 meta builds that have been here for over a year. That's a very hard task. It's still possible to find the fun within PvP. This footage you're watching in the background was from just a few days ago. My friends and I had a really fun, multi-dozen manhunt run in the DZ, but it is absolutely becoming more difficult. On the same topic, I've been getting a lot of questions as to why there have been no new DZ farming videos as of late. That is a series that I spun up in more recent times and it got a lot of popularity. The last entry to it was me finally getting an Eagle Bearer from the Dark Zone, but at the time I was like, yeah, I'll keep going. We'll get the Ravenous and the Bighorn. I'm telling you guys, since that video, I have sat down and tried to record a new episode maybe 3 to 4 times when it was either targeted ARs or rifles, and every single attempt just ended in complete failure. Me dying to the same meta builds, to cheaters, you name it. Trying to have success, specifically as a solo player in this current PvP meta, is almost impossible. And that's if you don't run into someone that's already exploiting the game in some more fundamental way, like with the Tinkerer bug that is still existing now somehow after like 3 fixes. So, all of this is to say that naturally, as sad as it is to see, a continually worsening PvP environment means that I'm going to be playing it less and less. Now, as for any hopes of seeing PvP improve, we don't know what the devs are planning to do to address it. If anything, they haven't really committed to anything. As I said before though, they are aware, and even in my interview recently with Alex, the game director, he did say that PvP balance is on his list that he eventually would like to get to and look at. We'll see what, if anything, comes from that and when. The only real silver lining here, in my opinion, is that we have survivors on the horizon. And so, in my mind, the worst case scenario is that if PvP remains unchanged and untended to, I would certainly be very sad, and I will be vocalizing my frustrations if that's the case. But at least I'll have an outlet for that, gameplay passion of mine once Survivors rolls around. Assuming it has PvP, of course. I think it'd be wild if it didn't. But that's not here yet, right? That's still a good ways out. And so, obviously my playtime has reduced since I'm just not enjoying it like I used to. The other piece to this, and the other kind of content that I've always been able to really find a lot of replayability in, is your more dynamic, difficulty scaled PvE content, right? I'm not the kind of player who can just play the same static main mission on challenging like 100 times over, but stuff like Countdown, stuff like Resistance in the Division 1, that's my jam. All of that to say though, again, finding difficulty scaled PvE content on that level these days, it hardly exists anymore. Now let me be clear, I'm nowhere near the best player out there, so in the past when I've said, I want more challenge in the game, a lot of people will come back at me and say, well, you should try doing legendary missions with a pistol with 5 directives on, or blindfold yourself, tie one hand behind your back, and solo a hardcore raid with a Slayer. I'm exaggerating, of course, but for me, and remember this is a very subjective video, this is just my POV on things, I don't view handicapping myself like that as an enjoyable challenge, or as an enjoyable gameplay experience. Some people do, and that's absolutely awesome, but I find my joy in constructing unique or otherwise creative builds and testing that against adequately scaled NPCs and content. Now, in the past year or so for me, that outlet was in Heroic Countdown. I felt that the scaling in there was tuned high enough that it still felt like there was a space to push those min-maxed, expertise modifier-enabled builds to the limit, and it still, required some amount of thought and persistence. But as these seasons go on, our stats continue to inflate, we get crazier and crazier sets and exotics, modifiers continue to get more powerful. I mean, let's not even bring up Zealot from this season. The fact that people can pop that and run and face tank 3 hunters at floor 100 of the summit, that should really tell you all you need to know right there. So because of this, for me, even content like Heroic Countdown or Legendary Missions, even though those kind of became old years ago due to static spawns, they're just getting pretty worn out. Not even to then mention standard Heroic content, which is the highest scaling that most content is available at, let alone anything else, right? It's all just too easy. Now, when we heard that retaliations were coming our way, which is the new mode and feature that we got this season, I was really excited for them. The idea of an enemy-packed, time-limited control point rush kind of mode sounded really enticing. But now that we've had them in the game for a month or so, again, for me, the scaling just isn't there. There should be some footage playing in the background of a run that my friends and I tried, where on paper we were trying to seek out what should technically be the hardest retaliation possible. And in our mind, that was to run in a group, so you had that scaling. It was to play it in Brooklyn, so that the control points had those defenses, and it was to fight against the Rikers, because they're historically the hardest general faction to fight with all the overheal that they get and whatnot. But even though we pushed all those things to the limit, as you'll see, we still just melt through everything. Now, historically, because I've had this thought for a while, that there is not, enough dynamic, difficult PvE content left in the game. Historically, that has been an unpopular opinion. I've discussed difficulty before here on the channel, and many people would push back and say that I was being elitist or that the game was plenty hard for the majority. Let me be clear that for the record, I would never try and advocate for a blanket difficulty increase. I think scalable options is ideal. That's how you cater to the widest amount of people. The problem in my mind is that we have the lower end scaling in the game, and that works, right? But the higher end has just capped out, and it's not matched to the amount of power that we've accrued as players. But anyways, I figured that I was mostly still in the minority with this opinion, but something interesting happened where yesterday the devs tweeted out a poll asking players what they thought the most challenging hostile modifier this season has been, and the replies to it really surprised me because there were several people voicing similar thoughts to my own. I'll flash them on screen here. Someone said none, the game is still too easy. None of them, they all die before they become serious threats. None of them, the game is too easy now. Even a good friend of the channel, NYL Casual Gaming, said the icons are useful for spotting enemies through walls, but otherwise the enemy modifiers have no impact on the game. Still far too easy to steamroll everything. So again, I want to stress, I'm not saying that this is everybody's opinion, but it seems like a growing number of players are feeling this way. And so I don't think it's a shocker that when a vast majority of your most replayable content is simply easy and mindless, more and more people are going to continue to check out. And just like I was saying with PvP, that has been the case with me here. I used to run control points just for fun, right? I would really try and seek out that like control point plus a convoy plus another activity combo, get as many ads in one place as possible. And while that is still fun, nowadays I can just pop Zealot, be invincible, and mow everything down in the blink of an eye. As I think I mentioned a little bit earlier though, the devs have actually acknowledged this problem. Yannick has gone on record multiple times on dev streams in the past year or two saying that they know difficulty is continuing to become easier and easier and that they are developing a plan on how to address it, as well as Alex, the game director, recently replied to somebody on Twitter voicing the exact same complaints that I'm giving here by saying it's coming with a smiley face. So I have no doubt that eventually this will get addressed in some manner, which is once again why this is not a I quit Division video where the game is doomed, right? The team's doing their thing, they're cooking, they're getting more done than ever before, at least for this new development team. They can't solve every single issue at once, I recognize that. It's just that, unfortunately for me, my two main hooks and gameplay interests are severely lacking right now. But hopefully, as we've looked at, that won't last forever. And so I think this serves as a pretty good segue into this final segment where I just wanted to briefly chat about the channel and provide kind of a personal update for me. Despite me playing less Division 2 in my free time recently, the coverage that you know and expect from me is not going anywhere. I'm very excited for the Survivors update that we have coming sometime this month, as well as the Halloween event. Me playing less on the day-to-day does not mean that I'm any less of a fan or not looking forward to what's coming. I am. But as I have preached to so many of you over the years who come to me and say, I'm just bored, I don't have that same feeling of excitement when I play the game, guess what? It's okay to take a break. Breaks are very healthy. No game, no matter how well it's designed, is meant to be played forever. And so for myself, maybe this is all ideal timing that I'm feeling this way right now. For me, that is Arc Raiders. That is a game that is releasing at the end of this month. We've been following it here on the channel since the reveal back in 2021, and it is genuinely the first new IP and game that I've really been invested in and excited for on the same level as Division 1 was back in the 2010s. So I've got a few videos lined up that I plan to make for Arc Raiders both before and after its launch at the end of the month. Again, I want to stress this is nothing permanent. I'm not moving away from the Division. I simply think this is a good opportunity for me to take a bit of a breather, step back a bit, flex my creative muscles on something else for a change. And so I wanted to say that even if Arc is not quite your thing, I would appreciate if you have the time to still tune into those videos, even if it's just to drop a like and then head out. Historically on YouTube, covering a different game or niche than what you've been slotted into is not great for the algorithm. It doesn't like it. So yeah, any help on making that not quite as detrimental would be very appreciated. But yeah, folks, for the most part, those are my plans. That's the latest with me, and that's about all I've got. I really just wanted to jump on here, chat about the game, my feelings on things right now. And so at this point, I would love your thoughts. Do you share any similar concerns to me about the current state of the Division 2? Maybe for you and the content that you play, the game has never been better. If that's the case, more power to you. As I said, I'm stoked that the whole of the Division is doing so well right now. Prosperity for the majority still means nothing but good things for us as we continue the slow march to the Division 3. And hopefully the stuff that really gets me pumped to play Division makes its way in soon. But in the meantime, stay tuned for, of course, more Division videos, also some Arc videos thrown in the near future. But yeah, that's all I've got. RogueGold out.